In the gray wash of that morning, when the world seemed held in a single breath, the lane stretched before them like a ribbon of old wounds. The mist clung low, carrying with it the faint sour smell of wet straw and ashes. Each step of the boy's bare feet sank into the cold mud, and the mud answered, gripping, as if it wished to keep him there forever. Somewhere far off, a bell rang again, slow and patient, as though time itself had grown tired. The woman's hands trembled as she held the cloth bundle close to her chest. It was light, too light, and she felt its hollowness as though it were her own. Barley, a little crust of bread, the last of the smoked beans, nothing more. The cloth smelled of smoke because the hut where they slept was nothing but smoke and cold, a place where hunger curled into the corners like a living thing. Yet she carried it as though it held the weight of their lives. Around them the cottages, crouched low to the earth, roofs sagging, windows shuttered. Thin threads of smoke rose from only a few. The rest stood cold. Here, in these fields, there was no sound but their breath and the slow dragging of their steps. Even the wind seemed to have grown still, as though watching them pass. They came to the shrine, a virgin with no eyes left in her peeling wooden face, and the boy tilted his head up. For a long moment, he searched her ruined features, as if she might still speak, as if she might bend down and whisper that this life would soften. But she only stared forward, blind to the lane, blind to him. He said nothing. Words, he had learned, were like food, rare, and to be kept for when they were most needed. Dot beyond the cottages stretched the open ground, frozen and colorless. The fields here never belonged to them. Men with iron and horses said which earth was theirs and which was not, and the boy had learned early to walk on the thin strips left behind. Somewhere up the hill, the manor sat, its roof black against the pale sky. Up there, the fires burned hot and the tables groaned beneath meat and bread. Down here, there was mud, the sharp ache of emptiness in the belly, and the endless walking. The boy's mother glanced once toward that hill, and then away. She had been a girl once, soft-faced and laughing, but now the wind and the hard winters had carved lines so deep it was as if her face had been made of oak all along. Still, she walked. It was not defiance. It was simply that to stop would be to let the earth swallow her whole. Behind them, the sound of a rooster broke the quiet. Its call was clear and sudden, a sound of life in a place that had almost forgotten it. The boy turned his head for a moment and listened, but the sound faded quickly. It was already claimed by the mist. The mother shifted the bundle in her hands, and he saw how red her knuckles were from the cold, how the cloth clung to her skin. His stomach knotted with hunger, but he did not ask what was inside. He knew better. Whatever she carried was already counted and promised. He would eat only when she placed a piece of it in his palm, never before. Dot as they walked on the lane, bent toward a stand of bare trees. Their branches were like the fingers of beggars, reaching up at a sky that never answered. Under those branches the wind gathered, carrying with it the scent of the river, swollen and restless. The boy had heard whispers about that river, how in the spring it rose without warning, sweeping away the weak, pulling the world into its cold arms. He had not seen it yet, but he could hear it now, a low growl behind the silence, and it made his steps quicker. The mist thickened, wrapping them in its pale folds. The boy's breath came in quick puffs, little ghosts rising to join the bigger one that seemed to hang over this land. He thought of the people in the cottages, of the coughing that filled the night, of the faces he saw sometimes that looked as gray as the sky. He did not know the word plague, not truly, but he knew what it left behind. Empty huts, broken bowls, mothers weeping. Sometimes when he woke in the dark, he wondered if the land itself was sick and whether it would ever heal. His mother reached out, steadying him with her hand. "Keep close," she whispered, her voice no louder than the wind. It was the only thing she had said all morning. He nodded. He had no words to answer her. For a while they walked like that, their shadows faint against the pale ground. The boy imagined that if they stopped, the mist would simply close around them and no one would know they had ever been there. Maybe that was what it meant to be poor, to be as thin and unnoticed as smoke. Then from somewhere above the trees, there came a sudden sound, the heavy beating of wings. A crow, black as pitch, rose up, cutting through the mist like a blade. Its wings opened wide, the feathers shining wet in the weak light, and it climbed higher and higher until it was nothing but a speck. The boy's eyes followed it, and he felt something stir in him, a question he could not name. He wondered where the bird was going, and if it would find a place where the air was not so heavy. His mother touched his shoulder, gently urging him. On. The road ahead bent away from the lane, leading deeper into the pale fields. Whatever waited for them there, they would have to meet it together. Somewhere far off, the bell rang again. Slower now, softer dot, and as they walked on into that sound, the mist behind them closed like a door. The wind moves like a knife over the field, cutting through what is left of the harvest. There is nothing here but the ghosts of grain, stiff stalks bending low, their tops snapped and shining with frost. The land seems to wait, as if listening, but it gives no answer. From the edge of the field, a pale thread of smoke rises from a low, crooked hut. It climbs into the cold air and disappears inside. The air is thick with the smell of peat and thyme. The walls, dark with age, hold the warmth close, though it is never enough. The family sits in a circle around the fire. Pit, they do not speak. Their hands hover over the embers as if they are praying, but this prayer is for heat, for a moment of feeling, and fingers turn numb. The firelight flickers over their faces, carving deep hollows in their cheeks. On the floor between them lies the bread. Small, hard, no bigger than a man's fist. The father takes a knife whose edge has grown tired with years of use, and he cuts it slowly, as if every slice must be coaxed. The blade grinds against the crust. Each piece he makes is thin as bark, so that there might be enough to pass around. From father to mother to child it goes, and in the silence it feels as though the bread is more precious than gold. The smallest of them runs his fingertip along the crust before putting it to his mouth. He does this gently, savoring the roughness of the bread. It is a way to make it last, to let the mind pretend there is more. The others do not look at him. They know this hunger, and they have no wish to see it reflected in his eyes. Low voices come at last, quiet and careful. They speak of the reeve who came the day before, his cloak heavy, his hands quick to take what is owed to the manor. There will be little left, the father says, but they will work. They always work. The mother nods and says nothing more, as though her silence itself is an answer. Beyond these walls, the cold waits. In the yard, the oxen stand with ribs sharp beneath their hides. Their breath spills into clouds hanging white in the morning air. The ground is frozen hard, and the ruts left by wheels and boots have filled with ice. Even the air seems sharpened, a thing that cuts the skin. But inside the hut there is a rhythm, fragile but certain. Day follows night, planting follows reaping. And even now, when the world takes more than it gives, there is a vow made in that rhythm, a vow that they will not break. The candle in the center of the room leans with the draft, its flame bending, almost going out, and then standing again. Far off, from somewhere beyond the frozen field, the church bell begins to ring. Its voice is slow, hollow, calling for prayers that most have no time to give. The sound reaches the hut and fades, but no one rises to answer. At the edge of the trees, wolves move without a sound. Their shapes pass between the trunks, seen only by the crows that wait above. The wolves are hungry too. They watch and they wait, patient as the winter itself. On the windowsill, where the frost gathers thick, a small bird hops. A sparrow, brown and plain, with feathers puffed against the cold. It tilts its head, pecks once at the wood, and then lifts into the air. For a heartbeat it hovers, beating its wings hard against the season. And then it is gone, flying into the wide, empty sky. Family does not see it go. They sat close to the fire, eating slowly, their faces turned toward the faint heat. And though the world outside their walls is sharp and merciless, there is, for a brief moment, something like peace in that circle of light the wind moves against. The hut, rattling the loose boards, whispering of all that waits beyond this day. Somewhere in the distance, another bell tolls, and the sound of it lingers like a question, pulling us forward into whatever comes next. A shutter slams in the wind, sharp as a slap, and a flurry of stale crumbs scatter down like pale rain. Birds dive and fight in the air for them, wings thrashing, their cries thin and wild. Beneath this storm of wings, a woman kneels, her hands deep in a wooden bucket that smells of lye and the gray river. The water is ice. It bites at her skin, creeps up through the cloth on her arms, stinging all the way to the bone. She does not flinch. She has been in this alley all her life, and here the stones are always wet, the walls always breathing with dampness. She twists a strip of linen, and the water that falls from it is the color of the street, cloudy, unclean. Her hands are raw from work, her knuckles cracked, the skin broken in fine lines. Behind her, barrels sweat in the cold and rats move like whispers between them. They are not afraid. They know the alley and she does. Above the narrow roofline, the castle's towers rise in the fog. Their shadows stretch like long cold fingers, and she feels them even when she does not look. The city does not sleep. Even here, in this forgotten narrow place, the sound of its life comes spilling in. The groan of wheels over cobbles, the haggling of traders, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, sharp and endless. The air is thick with scents, wood smoke, salted, fish, dung, sweat, the bite of the forge. The city has its own weather, and it seeps into everything. She stands slowly, feeling the weight of her back, the weight of every day behind her. Across the mouth of the alley, a priest passes, his robe already streaked with mud. He clutches a book to his chest as if it could warm him, his sandals wet with morning filth. She watches him go, and something inside her aches. She wonders if there is a single word in that book for women like her. For those who wash away the stains of others, who carry the waste beyond the walls, whose hands have touched the dirt of 100 lives, but whose own name will vanish when they do. A small voice breaks the thought. At the door of her hut, a child stands waiting, holding up a toy carved from a scrap of last winter's firewood. It is a clumsy carving, worn smooth where little fingers have held it too tightly. The boy's cheeks are red from the cold, his breath curling like white smoke in the air. Dachi wipes her hands on her apron, leaving pale streaks. She bends, draws him close, and presses her face into his hair. It smells of hay, of earth, of something. Warm and living in a city that has forgotten such things. Hay she still is. For a moment, she does not hear the wheels or the shouting or the sound of her own heart. Then the bell rings. Far away, from somewhere deep in the marketplace. Its tone is slow, deep, and steady. She feels it travel up through the stones into her chest. It is the hour. She pulls back, smooths his hair with her wet hand, and lifts the bucket. It is heavy now, sloshing cold against her legs. The linen inside clings to itself, heavy as stones. She steps into the street. The alley opens onto a world that moves without looking at her. Men carry barrels on their shoulders, their breath steaming. A cart groans under the weight of salted meat. Women with baskets on their arms walk quickly and carefully, their shawls pulled tight. The wind snakes through all of it, carrying with it the cry of gulls and the smell of the harbor. She walks slowly, shoulders bent. The water in the bucket rocks and spills in thin ribbons across the stones, washing away nothing. Ahead, the road climbs, twisting toward the gates. Somewhere beyond, the castle bells begin to toll, answering the market bell. The two sounds fold together, heavy as a tide. For a moment, she looks up. There, high above, the castle's towers stand against the pale sky, their windows black, unblinking. Inside those walls, decisions are made that will fall like crumbs, and she will be left to fight the birds for what is left. Her boy calls after her, and she turns just once, smiling through the cold. Then she walks on, the bucket swaying at her. Side, the sound of water like the sea itself. The street bends, narrowing. Ahead waits the gate, the world beyond, and the long day that will follow. Somewhere a gull cries again, and its wings vanish into the mist, leaving only the ringing of the bells. And the bells carry us forward, as if the day itself is opening. And what lies beyond it we do not yet know. That snow drifts down in silence, slow as falling ash, and gathers on the cloister roof. It softens the sharp lines of stone until the whole place seems carved out of a dream. Beneath the long colonnade, a novice bends to her work, the broom in her hand scratching a rough, steady path across the cold flagstones. Each stroke is the same as the last, a rhythm that matches the chant that hums from the chapel behind her walls. The sound is low, in a tongue she repeats without knowing. The broom handle burns her palms. The frost burns her breath. A thin cloak clings to her, patched so many times that wind still finds its way through. Around her face the edge of her wimple is stiff with ice, and each exhale hangs in the air like smoke. Inside, from behind the heavy wooden doors, the chant rises and falls like the tide. Matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext. Bells guide every moment, and in this place, bells are law. There are no words allowed outside of prayer, and so she has learned to hear other voices, the creak of the cloister beams, the crack of ice at dawn, the hiss of bees in summer, now sleeping beneath snow. She sweeps and remembers another voice. A man's voice, rough, the way it caught when he bent to speak to her that last morning. He left her at this gate 7 winters ago, a child with a woolen cap and eyes wide from fear. She has not heard from him since. At first she waited, sure he would return, but the seasons came and passed, and the waiting turned into a hollow space that nothing has ever filled. Her hands are no longer the hands of a child. They are red, rough, split open where water and soap in winter have stripped them. The skin along her knuckles is hard as bark. She scrubbed floors until her fingers swelled, milked cows and fed chickens, pulled weeds until her back ached, and when the bells called, she knelt on stone until her knees turned the color of bruised plums. This is the work of her life now. Broom, bucket, prayer, silence. Beyond these walls, the world bends under hunger. The plague gnaws at the villages, and men die nameless in the mud. She hears the news only in murmurs, the sound of the porter talking low with a passing merchant, or the way the abbess frowns when a cart does not come. Here, the stone walls are strong. They keep out much of it. But walls do not keep out longing. Hunger here is another kind. They fast, and the ache of it becomes a kind of offering. She has been told that the body must be emptied so that the soul can be full. But there are nights when the hollowness is too much, when she curls on her straw bed, hands on her belly, and whispers prayers just to drown out the ache. The sky is pale. No sun shows, only the steady drift of snow, and the wind that snakes through the arches of the cloister. She raises her broom and pauses. A black bird has come. It lands on the rim of the stone well in the center of the courtyard, feathers dark against the white. It leans down and drinks, tilting its beak to catch the water. Then it looks at her. For a long moment, it does not move. She stares back. Something inside her moves, small, sharp, sudden. She wonders if it has come for her. A messenger, perhaps, from the world she cannot see. A voice rises from the chapel, deep and resonant. The chant swells, filling the air, and she closes her eyes. The bird hops once, lifts its wings, and with a rush of air, it rises. The wind carries it up past the cloister roof, into the pale white of the day, until it is lost from sight. Snowflakes cling to her lashes, melting into cold trails on her cheeks. She does not wipe them away. Slowly, she lowers the broom and begins to sweep again. Each scrape across the stone is softer now, slower. In the sound of the broom, in the chanting, in the cry of the bird fading high above, the day continues as it always has. And somewhere beyond these walls, beyond the white fields and the winter roads, life is moving toward her, though she cannot yet know it. The bell comes first. A hollow sound rolling over the flat winter fields, over roofs patched with straw and snow, over the broad, slow bend of the river. It rings once and then again, as if the evening itself is being called home. In the wide, beaten ground beside that river, the market struggles to live. It comes only once a week, although winter does its best to kill it. The stalls are made of whatever can be found: old doors laid across barrels, crooked poles draped with thin, torn cloth. The goods on display are few and poor. Eels twist in half-frozen buckets, their skins black and silver in the pale light. Onions and turnips lie in baskets, dirt still clinging to them, as though the earth had not yet let them go. Wind curls around the linden tree at the market center. Beneath its bare branches a fiddler stands, his bow patched with twine, the wood worn thin where his fingers have pressed year after year. He plays anyway, a thin, wandering tune, high and trembling. But it is enough. The notes float out like pale threads, trying to hold this little gathering together against the cold. Cloaks move in the wind like a patchwork banner. Women haggle in low voices, pulling their shawls tight. Shepherds stamp their boots to beat the mud. A peddler lifts a tray and calls out the saints, carved small into candles, each wax face staring, as if it knows how short these flames will burn. There's a ripple of laughter then, sudden, light as a stone across water. A boy runs past with a goose pressed to his chest, its neck long and wild as it hisses at the air. Behind him, men shout, half angry, half laughing, but no one runs too fast. For a moment the sound lifts the weight, and the market feels almost like spring. But it does not last. The wind finds its way back, and with it the truth. Faces are hollowed, lips pale, eyes tired. Every coin is weighed in a hand before it leaves, turned over twice as if by doing so they can make it multiply. Hunger has learned to wait here, patient, always just behind the next breath. Near the riverbank, a woman stands beside an empty tray. She was a baker once, before the wheat was gone. Now she stares at the water that moves slowly and cold, imagining the fields that did not grow, the grain she could not buy. Her fingers are cracked, but she dips a cloth into the icy water and wipes her hands anyway, as though to remove a dusting of flour that has not been there for months. She looks at the river as if it might speak back, but the river has no words. The boy with the goose vanishes into the trees. The fiddler lowers his bow. The sound falters. The bell rings again, closer now from the small wooden church at the far end of the lane. Its voice is softer than the great bells of cities, but it carries, clear as breath in winter. One by one, heads lift. The market begins to fold. Stalls are packed away, boards and cloth gathered in arms. The women take their baskets, the shepherds their staff. The peddler closes his box of candles, snuffing one last flame with a careful pinch. The fiddler tucks his bow into its case and holds his violin under his arm like a child. The wind scatters the last scraps of talk until nothing is left but footsteps and the faint clinking of buckles and coins. The ground empties. The wide space where voices were becomes still, marked only by the lines of wagon wheels and the prints of boots pressed into frozen mud. And still the river moves. It does not hurry. It carries with it reeds and branches, little scraps of earth, torn away from other places. It curves past the market, past the church, past the edge of the village, carrying everything toward a place no one here has ever seen. At the bank, Where the frost has begun to harden into a white skin, a heron stands. Its feathers are pale, as gray as water. For a long while it is still, as if carved. Then it spreads its wings. The wings rise wide and slow. They lift the bird from the ground, and with a single push it is in the air. Over the river, over the empty market, over the roofs and the chimneys. The air beneath it bends, carrying it higher and higher into the pale, open sky. Below, the bell rings for the final time. The heron does not look down. It rises into the distance, a single small shape in the great winter light, its wings holding. All of this, the hunger, the sound, the smallness and the hope in their long and patient flight. And somewhere beyond the bend, where the river disappears into mist, the day is already leaning into what comes next. A sky of pewter hangs low over the hills, heavy and without mercy. Under it, the road twists like a gray ribbon, cutting through earth that has been opened and broken for years. Here the wind tastes of dust and iron. Deep scars of quarries line the slopes, their walls raw and pale, as if the land itself has been carved and left to heal too slowly. Upon this road, a man walks alone. His breath comes out in white clouds that vanish as soon as they form. On his back hangs a pack of tools, mallets, chisels, hammers, and with each step they strike against one another, dull and steady, like muffled bells tolling only for him. His cloak is rough, stiff from rain and old sweat. His hands, gripping the staff he carries, are thick and scarred, fingers split and blackened at the nails, shaped by years of stone. This man is a mason. All he has is on his back, all he has. None is in his hands. He walks toward the next cathedral town, a place whose towers he has never seen but can imagine. Walls rising like prayers, scaffolds reaching for a sky that does not answer. There, the master builder waits for men who can carve angels from limestone. Angels that will watch the centuries, even when the men who carved them have long been gathered into the earth. The road is long. He stops from time to time, leaning on his staff, looking over the bare, winter-bitten fields. Crows scatter ahead of him, black shapes against the gray hills. His breath is shallow, but he does not complain. There is no one to hear him, and the road itself gives nothing back. He passes inns now and again. Low, tired buildings of wattle and daub, their roofs sagging under wet straw. From their chimneys rises thin smoke, a faint promise of heat. When night finds him, he sleeps on straw, curled close to his pack. He dreams of stone, always stone. Of blocks stacked on one another, of walls that climb, of towers that pierce the clouds. In his sleep he hears bells, not these dull bells of tools against one another, but clear and high, the bells that speak to heaven in the daylight he walks on. He shares the road with others who travel it for the same reason, need. A peddler passes him, ribbons fluttering from his pack like forgotten flags, though no one will buy them. A woman with a basket of leeks walks with her head bent low. A tinker leads a donkey that carries more rusted pots than meat on its bones. They nod. As they pass, a simple greeting, and the road swallows them again. Everyone walks on, alone together. It is a hard life, this road. The cold creeps under the cloak, the stones press through the soles of boots. The hills stretch out like a weight that will not end, but there is something that holds him upright. Pride, perhaps, a quiet, fierce thing. He carries within him knowledge that the work of his hands will outlast him, that somewhere in towns he will never return to, angels he has carved already watch from high walls, their faces turned toward a heaven he can never reach. There is power in shaping something that remains when all else has gone. A man who can carve stone can hold back time, if only for a little while. The wind picks up, sliding its cold fingers through his cloak, tugging at it until it whips behind him. He pulls it close and lowers his head against the gust. His boots bite into the mud, step after step, and still he walks far ahead, he can see nothing yet. No spire, no roofline, no crane stretching its arms toward the sky. Only the long gray path, coiling over the hills and vanishing where the earth dips away. He does not quicken his pace. The road will take him where he is meant to go, somewhere. Beneath scaffolds and ropes, his hands will touch stone again. He will strike the chisel, hear the ring of it, feel the block give way, bit by bit, until something beautiful begins to rise out of the raw and stubborn earth. And one day, when the scaffolds are gone and the bells are hung, the angels will stand with open wings, looking down on the world. They will never speak, but their faces will hold the silence of the mason's own life, shaped by hands that the world has already begun to forget. The wind pulls at him again, colder now. He adjusts his shoulder strap and starts moving again. And as he goes, the sky deepens, the light fades, and the gray road unrolls ahead of him, always ahead, into the place where the next chapter waits. Under the black vault of the trees, a soundless prayer is whispered. It is not spoken by lips, but by bodies pressed close to the ground, bodies that do not wish to be seen. The forest, deep and endless, becomes a chapel for the broken. The earth here is soft. Pine needles give way underfoot, their smell sweet and sharp, mixed with the wet musk of bark. The air is heavy with sap. Mist clings low, wrapping itself around roots and stones. Every branch above seems to hold its breath. In this hidden place, a small gathering lives in the quiet that the world has denied them. A mother crouches on the earth, holding her child beneath her cloak. The boy is thin, his eyes wide and watchful, as if even in sleep he expects the sound of boots on leaves. Beside her sits a man whose leg has grown crooked from an old wound. He leans on a crutch made from a crooked branch. And near them, on a blanket of moss, lies a runaway serf whose hands are still raw from the last time he gripped the plow. They are a band without banners. Their only flag is hunger. The day is spent gathering what little the forest gives. Mushrooms pried from the damp soil. Acorns ground into a bitter meal that never fills the belly. Sometimes, if the string trap is kind, a squirrel, small, bony. Its meat shared in silence. The cold presses them from all sides, but the trees stand as their walls, holding back the wind. When night comes, there is no fire. A single spark could be a death sentence. Instead, they draw together, pressing their backs to the earth's slow heartbeat, their own hearts quick and anxious. In the dark, the forest makes its own music. The hollow cry of an owl, the long groan of branches under frost, the whisper of something unseen moving across fallen leaves. Far off there is a river. Its voice is constant, a silver thread of sound in the silence. They speak softly, their words shaped more by memory than hope. Of the fields they left behind, where the soil gave nothing and the tithe took everything. Of the Lord's whip. Of barns emptied grain by grain, until the only thing left was the echo of the sickle against wood. But here, among the trees, there's one thing that has not been taken. The sky. When the branches thin above their clearing, they see it, the stars. Cold and sharp and infinite. A scatter of silver spilled across black. In those moments, they are not serfs or runaways or beggars. They are simply human. And for a few breaths, the forest feels like a roof strong enough to hold the heavens. A fox moves near the edge of their camp. Its paws are silent on the needles. Its eyes glint in the faint light of the moon. It pauses, watching them with a stillness that belongs to wild things, and then slips away, vanishing as if it had never been. They sleep at last, curled like roots. And in sleep, they dream the same dream of bread that is warm, of a spring that will come and find them whole. Again, of a life where they are not hunted, the night is long. And then, as always, dawn bleeds into the forest. The first pale light creeps between the trunks, touching their faces, showing them as they are. Thin, worn, but not yet broken. They rise without a word. The mother gathers her son into her arms. The lame man lifts his crutch. The serf rolls his blanket and ties it across his back, and they move. Step by step, light on the ground, as if even the earth might rise against them. In the hush of the forest, their footsteps fade. Only the trees remain, silent, keeping their secrets. Far ahead, beyond the next bend, the forest begins to thin. What lies beyond waits with an open hand or a closed fist? They do not know which, but they go anyway. A single log cracks in the hearth, loud as a whip. The sound slices through the stillness of the kitchen and makes the girl flinch. Though no one notices, inside these pale wooden walls, the air is thick, heavy with steam from a pot of cabbage, with the tang of wood smoke that stings the eyes, with the faint damp smell of rushes strewn across the floor. The smoke curls toward the beams like a tired ghost, and beneath it, the bodies move. The kitchen is its own world, hidden beneath the manor. Here, life beats to the sound of knives on boards, of water sloshing in buckets, of ladles striking iron. No one speaks unless they must. A boy turns the spit with both hands, the fat from the meat hissing as it drips into the coals. A girl grinds coarse salt with a pestle so worn it has grooves where fingers have clutched it for years. The cook mutters into the pot, her words low, a charm against mistakes. They act as shadows, seen only when something is wrong. They are the hands that make the Lord's table heavy with bread and meat and sweetmeats. And yet those hands will never touch what they prepare. They taste only to see if the food is spoiled, never to enjoy it. When the stew is right, they swallow quickly and wipe their mouths. Time here is not counted by the sun. It is counted by the bells, matins, terce, vespers, and by the hollow ache in the belly before scraps are passed down. Near the hearth, a girl no older than 12 bends over the flagstones, scrubbing with a rag that leaves her fingers red and raw. Her hair is hidden beneath a kerchief. Her feet are bound in rags instead of shoes. She works until her arms tremble, until her back burns like iron left too long in the forge. For a moment, just a moment, she stops. She presses her palms together, blows warmth into them, and stares at the table above her head. She has never sat there. She has never even stood close. She imagines the cups, carved from horn, their rims smooth beneath her lips. She imagines the wax from the gold candlesticks, dripping like honey. She imagines a chair, to sit just once, without someone ordering her to move. The door opens. The steward enters, a long shadow cutting the room. His boots strike the floor like a drum. Every back bends lower. Faces drop toward the stones. Faster, he says. Voice as sharp as the lash he carries on his belt. The kitchen grows louder at once. The scrape of knife and pestle and ladle doubling in speed. The spit turns faster. The stew stirs faster. The girl's rag slaps harder against the stones. The steward's eyes pass over them and find nothing. He turns, and as quickly as he came, he is gone, leaving the door to slam shut behind him. The room exhales, softly. In the corner, a mouse slips from behind a grain sack. It nibbles at a crumb, its whiskers trembling, unseen by anyone except the girl who scrubs. She watches it for a heartbeat, then dips her rag into the bucket again. Outside, the winter wind rattles the shutters, but no one raises their head to look. The work goes on. The days are all the same. Tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. The hands in this room will bend their backs over the same spit, the same stones, the same scraps. They will make feasts so rich that the hall above will laugh and drink deep and never know the names of those who filled their cups. And still, they will endure, bent but not broken, silent but not gone. In the steam that rises, in the smoke that stings, in the hush that follows when the steward's boots are gone, there's a thin thread of hope, stubborn as a root-breaking stone. And somewhere high above in the hall, they will never see. The candles burn low, dripping wax that will never touch their hands. But they keep working, because to stop is to disappear. And in the hush of this kitchen While the wind claws at the shutters, there's already another sound, the faintest, farthest murmur of something stirring beyond these walls. A change waiting just beyond the door. A black cross drips down the wood of a door, painted with a hand that no one wanted to raise. It has been there for days, the tar now cracked in the cold, and still the door stays shut. In this town, silence spreads wider than sickness. The market stalls are bare. The wells are watched but not touched. And through the empty lanes, a single cart moves, its axles crying, its wheels chewing at the cobbles. The cart carries bodies. No one looks at the cart. There was a time when these streets were alive with sound, with the calls of hawkers, the laughter of children, the ring of hammers in the smithy. Now the only sound is the slow turn of wood on stone and the dry rustle of ravens' wings overhead. Inside one narrow house, a man kneels beside a bed. The room is small and close, the windows shuttered tight, and the air reeks of vinegar, of rosemary, of fear. Candles burn low on the table, but they give no comfort. Their light flickers and bends as if it too is trying to escape. On the bed lies his son. The boy's breath rattles like dry reeds in the wind. Each breath comes harder, as if pulled from a deep, stubborn place. The father dips a rag in the bowl beside him and presses it to the boy's lips, whispering words that have no shape. He prays to everything and nothing. To Christ, to the Virgin, to the air itself. But the air is heavy and does not move. Outside, no physician comes. They are gone or dead or hiding. The Lord who owned these streets has taken his family to a hilltop far from here, where the air smells of pine and not of smoke and sickness. Only the friars remain, walking the lanes in their rough brown robes, their hoods drawn low. They swing censers that spill bitter incense, as if smoke could stop death from coming in. The boy's hand twitches once, and then it does not move again. Father does not cry. He sits there, still as the stone beneath the house. The only sound now is the bell, tolling slow and far away, counting lives that no one will name. At last he smooths the boy's hair back from his damp forehead, his fingers gentle, tracing the shape of a face he had hoped to see grow older. Then, with hands that do not tremble, he draws a rough sheet up over the small body. He tucks it in carefully, as if it were only sleep, as if this child might wake again when morning comes. But morning will not come here. He stays like that for a long time, listening. And when at last he rises, the room tilts and sways as though the world itself is hollow. Beyond the shuttered window, the cart comes again. Its wheels grind against the stones. Ravens follow above, their wings slow and heavy, their eyes bright and brutal. He hears them pass, and in the deepening dusk, he lifts the boy in his arms, carries him to the door, and opens it. Street looks back at him like an empty eye. One by one, doors close again. A few shutters move. Somewhere, a friar chants, his voice thin and trembling. The cart stops. The driver does not speak. The man lays his son down among the others, straightening his limbs, smoothing the sheet one last time. The smell of lime and decay rises, and he steps back, his face pale, his lips pressed tight against the howl that wants to break free. Night falls. The town's lanterns are closed. And one by one, as time creeps forward, those faint flames die out. Remember, and the dead to rest. Tomorrow, the friars will come again. Tomorrow, another cross will be drawn. And somewhere beyond this town, beyond the reach of the plague, a new dawn waits, a pale, cold light that will fall on a land forever changed. Mist crawls low across the marsh, silver in the fading light, a living thing that clings to everything it touches. And out of that mist, the mill stands like a sentinel, its broad wheel turning slow as a tired heart. The air here is heavy. It smells of wet reeds, of earth that never dries, of grain ground to powder and left to drift like pale ghosts across the stones. The marsh sinks under its own weight, and the mill sinks with it. yet still it endures. Inside, a man bends over the stones. His hair is white, though he is not yet old. His shoulders bent as if the years have settled there like sacks of barley. At his side is his daughter. She moves with a quiet strength, her hands dusted in flour, her skirt hemmed dark with mud. The sound of the wheel never stops. Its groan fills the air day and night, lifting water, spilling water, marking time. Even in sleep they hear it. Even in their dreams, people come from the dry villages beyond the marsh, their boots thick with soil. They bring sacks of barley, rye, and wheat and stand in line, waiting for the wheel to grind their hopes to flour. Some whisper blessings as they leave, some mutter curses when the toll is taken, for there is always a toll. The miller listens. To neither. His face is as closed as the stones spinning beneath his hands. The girl listens, though. She hears everything. She knows the creak of a sack when someone is trying to hide how light it is. She knows the sound of hunger in a voice, the roughness of worry when a father trades his last grain for flour he hopes will feed the winter through. She knows these things, but she says nothing. At dusk, the work falls away. The last sacks are emptied, the stones brushed clean, and the wheel goes on turning, but the mill itself grows still. Father and daughter sit side by side on the low step, their feet in the wet earth, sharing a crust of coarse bread. They watch the sky darken over the marsh. Above them, geese pass in a broken V, calling out into the dusk. Below, frogs begin. Their rough song, a sound like stones knocking together. She dreams sometimes, as the frogs sing, dreams of walking away from this marsh, of stepping out onto dry ground, of wind that smells of orchards and hay instead of water and mud. She dreams of streets where the earth does not swallow your feet, of voices that come from places she has never seen. But she stays because these stones know her hands, because the stream that turns the wheel has whispered to her since she was a child. Because here, in this sinking, heavy place, she belongs as much as the reeds and the frogs and the slow, endless water. Night deepens. A mist rises from the ground, curling like pale breath around the mill. It threads itself through the spokes of the wheel. It clings to the door. It wraps the marsh in white. The wheel turns still. Slow, steady, without hurry. It turned out like this before she was born. It will turn like this when she is gone. And somewhere beyond the mist, beyond the marsh, a rider moves along the far road, carrying tidings that will soon find even this quiet place. The sound of the wheel swallows everything now, but change, silent as fog, has already begun to drift closer. The night waits, and the water keeps moving.